I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat.
Good morning. Good morning.
What difference at this point does it make?
Deutsche Nation in einer stolzen Selbsteinschätzung.
Either you love freedom and with nations which embrace freedom, or you're with the enemy.
But we will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of the TCD podcast, brought to you as always by Australian Beer, Australian brews and Australian bands. It's an absolute pleasure to see you all. Thanks for joining us in the Periscope. If you are, I see Fritzer down there. Thank you very much. Let me just hit a little thing there. There we go. Lovely. So yeah, hope everyone's doing well. We're talking to you guys here at the Milo Show. Let me introduce the guys. Got Varun Prasad.
How's it going?
Very good, Varun. Just speaking to your mic a little more if you wouldn't mind.
Hello, hello.
There you go, that's a bit better. That's better. And we've also got the voice of reason, Adam J.
Hey, how you going?
Good.
Oh,
Good.
it's a bit loud.
Bit loud, is it?
That's perfect.
Bit perfect. Now everything good? Everything alright?
Yeah.
Everything
Beautiful,
great?
yeah.
Okay, good, let's go. So, as everyone's well aware, Milo's been in town. He arrived with great hoopla. I've been discussing it a little bit on Periscope. He's caused a bit of an uproar. I just grabbed this from the Weekend Australian today, guys. Antifa Australia goes for the jugular. The first rule of Antifa is you do not talk about Antifa. Not to a journalist, to any state. It is less an organisation than a broad objective across the radical left. A determination to block, frustrate and ultimately silence far-right politics. It is fundamentally illiberal and necessarily secretive. For those reasons, it is poorly understood and readily mischaracterised. Yeah, poor Antifa. So I guess the first question, guys, is did you see any Antifa, Varun, and what was going on there? Was there any action?
Mate, I was a little underwhelmed. Police did a great job, I suppose. I mean, if you're going to fork out an extra 80 grand on top of what you've already paid, that Milo had to.
Sure.
You'd expect some kind of standards.
Sure.
Look, all the streets surrounding the venue were on lockdown. You weren't allowed to walk on those streets unless you had tickets. And I'm not talking the street of the actual venue. I'm talking
Show us your
surrounding
papers,
streets.
comrade.
Pretty much, yeah.
Papers.
Yeah.
We
But look,
slipped through without getting it checked at the first checkpoint, but there was a second checkpoint.
yes.
Ah, 2 checkpoints.
Yeah.
Two checkpoints.
Checkpoint Charlie.
Multiple checkpoints.
Okay.
Multiple checkpoints, yeah. So, look, they did a good job at keeping the protesters at bay. Well, I don't know. I don't even think there were any protesters. It wasn't like Melbourne. Melbourne's a whole different kettle of fish.
That's right, yeah.
Well, it was a second show in Sydney.
Yeah.
They were there for the first show. The day that we went, it was a bit stormy. Even Milo commented on it. He said, yeah, you know, a bit of rain, and they care so much they don't even rock up because it's raining a little bit.
Yeah, it did.
And he said, yeah, it would have been their first shower in months, which is a great call. An old favourite of mine.
Well, what about the show itself? I mean, first of all, you had an issue where you didn't know where the venue was going to be until you were actually in the city. Like, they kind of kept you waiting all day. Apparently, that was a safety measure.
Yeah, safety measure, and I also heard there was a bit of, and this is, don't quote me on it, but I heard there was a bit of to and fro from between the Milo group, Penthouse that actually brought him out,
Okay.
and the original venues. They were asking for more money, more security, and then there was, look, we're too scared to have you guys here. I think he even had problems with the hotel room that he was due to stay in. Yeah,
Didn't
he had
get a
to
good
move to
rider, or
yeah, yeah. So that's, I mean, in terms of venue, we found out about 4 hours or 3.5 hours before the actual show started where it was going to be.
Yep.
So it looks ample time to get there.
Okay. Ads, what did you make of the crowd assembled?
No.
What was the makeup? Give us the general rundown, the demographic rundown of the assembled audience.
A mixture.
Okay.
Well dressed, middle class. Let's not forget. I think we got the cheapest tickets.
Yeah, yeah.
$100. So
Okay.
not cheap.
Yep.
Professional people. I mean, that's what I saw as well, and I was surprised because even though I didn't believe a word that the media says about who goes to Milo shows, the fact that they just day after day, article after article, are saying the same thing. You know, these are, you know, neo-Nazis, these are white supremacists. That was a bit of a shock because that's all you hear in the media.
Sure.
Well, it was
And-
kind of a bit of a running joke that even
Yeah.
when we were in the queue, someone turned around and told us, "Where are the guys with the swastika tattoos on their head?"
Yeah, where are they?
Yeah, where are they?
I've been waiting all day for these
Lots of couples.
neo-Nazis to come out, and I'm very disappointed.
Lots of couples.
Yeah, lots
Yeah.
of
Yeah, lots of young people, which was another thing that Milo pointed to. He goes, in the States, it's a little bit different. A lot of events, especially to do with conservatives or libertarians. He goes, yeah, 30% of the crowd die by the end of the show. So, you know, it was, you know, and he noticed that it was a bit different here in Australia, which was good.
I thought it was a good.
couples event, though. Would you take your wife to a romantic evening at the Milo
There were
show
heaps
to
of
hear
them, weren't
about
there, Varun?
Oh, there was a lot of couples.
Heaps.
Yeah,
to hear about the joys of taking black cock copiously? Like, I mean, you know, is that something you'd take your precious bubby girl
And
to?
there were like women that were just absolutely cheering. You know, they're really distasteful.
Really?
of this
Yeah.
show. Yeah, they were loving it. And then there was a couple right in front of us, and the guy was just clapping away and just absolutely cracking himself up.
Yeah.
And his missus is just there shaking her head.
Look, it was, I thought it was a good cross section of society. Yeah, there were a lot of young people, but there was a lot of elderly as well.
Yeah.
That we saw. You know, the male female demographic was pretty even.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all walks of society, from the professionals to just you know, people are out in town having fun. A lot of MAGA hats.
a lot of
Trump-
MAGA hats,
Trump-
red hats, the
Trump
red hat
flags.
There was a young man painted green with a Kyrgyzstan
Was there
flag.
really?
Yes,
Yeah.
there was.
crew. Painted like body paint.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Kyrgyzstani flag. He
Kyrgyzstani
had
flag.
what, like wearing it like a cape kind of sit up?
That's the
yeah,
one.
yeah, that's
Oh,
the
okay.
one.
We know a friend of ours who wouldn't be too happy with that.
Yeah.
'Cause that would
He
be a
wasn't,
sign
was
of
he?
racism. What about the policing and the security and stuff, Rowan? Were they good to you? Did they look after you?
Very friendly.
Yeah.
Very friendly, very helpful. Yeah, I think they were
A lot of
great.
arms crossed, basically.
A lot of
Yeah.
arms crossed.
Yeah, just leaning on the paddy wagon.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, not much to do.
Oh, they're probably thinking, you know, we're getting paid for this.
Sure,
Why not?
sure.
Riot squads
Yep.
around, cops and horses.
Cops on horses.
Yes. They had, what was it, 4 horses? Was
Yeah,
it?
4 horses.
The Four Horsemen.
That's it.
Four
Oh
horsemen.
no! Oh dear, it's apocalyptic out there at the Milo show.
And mate, there were cop cars all over the place though. I mean, you know, just circling the streets, you know, doing the rounds
Sure.
everywhere.
Yeah, it's like pretty much like going to a football game. It was shocking for a lot of the people that were there, and there was a lot of discussion about it in the line because the line was absolutely massive.
Okay.
And people were taking photos, people were taking videos of the police, like, oh my god, I mean, you know, there's a lot of cops here. I mean, we go to football here sometimes, like to the soccer games. It's not too much different, although it was all condensed into one spot.
Ah, okay. Yeah, they concentrated the
Yeah.
violence, the Nazis,
Yeah,
put them all into one spot.
It's a
Alright.
good little comparison you make with the soccer games because, you know, we do get a lot more trouble at the soccer games, but it's usually from the people you think that the Antifa would try to be protecting, you know?
Okay, well, what about the show itself? What stuck out for you? Like, what were the main themes that Milo hit? You know, is it kind of like just what we've seen from him before, the same sort of thing, or did he, you know, go into any new areas, breach any new ground? Did he make anything like Australia specific per se, or?
He made some cultural jokes about Australia. Look, there was nothing much that we gained in terms of a new understanding, breaking new ground, new learning like that, because, you know, we're already immersed in it.
Sure.
So it was more the atmosphere that we wanted to go for. Check out Milo, you know, in real life, what he looks like. Well, not what he looks like, but what his shows are like. He's a great performer.
Yep.
And I thought he was brilliant. It was a great laugh.
He plays the crowd well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he
oh,
does.
fantastically well.
Pizzagate was brought up at one stage.
Was it really?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. First question at the Q&A. at the
Yeah,
end.
the first.
Really?
Yeah.
So
And-
someone was on top of their game.
Yeah, and that's another thing, like, from the conversations that people were having, like, you could, you know, grab a sentence here and there.
Sure.
People are very knowledgeable about these things.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
the people
they-
at the Milo show are.
Yeah, people at the Milo show. So everyone went there knowing what to expect from Milo.
Okay.
But they lapped it up. And they got all the references, which,
Really?
you know, yeah, it was really good that way, you know, so.
Okay.
One of the
Right.
things that really struck out to me that I thought he made a good point was the whole idea about name calling. So, you know, we talk about freedom of speech, and he gets he gets wrecked by the media, pretty much telling him that
Definitely.
you say all these things that are so harmful, and
He's so hateful.
He's so hateful. But his response to that is pretty much, look, I call someone fat, I call someone ugly, I call someone this or that. That makes me look bad, but for the last 30 years, we've had media pundits on the left calling us names like racist, like and sexist. Because these aren't just names; these are accusations.
Yes.
So he goes, when you compare my name calling that
Well,
makes
yeah,
me
it's-
look bad,
yeah.
your name calling makes the person you're calling that name
Yeah,
look bad.
you're not just calling someone fat or
Yeah.
an idiot. You're saying you have this pathological tendency towards hate that makes you want to genocide people.
Yeah.
Like that's
Exactly, that's right.
But they just throw the word. I mean, that's part of the problem now, isn't it, Adam J? That they've gotten to the stage now where they just throw these around so much that
So casually.
that it's not even like an insult for them. It's just like, no, I'm just calling you out. I'm calling you what you are. Like. There's no sort of
Yeah, it's like
reflection
a
there
boxer
at all.
that's lost all his energy and he's just absolutely just swinging, just absolute nothings.
D-Pace, thanks for joining us on the Periscope. Yeah.
Yeah, but these are accusations that he said that can ruin someone's life.
Yeah.
Whereas if you call someone fat, okay, you'll ruin their day for, you ruin one day of their entire life.
Well, it has ruined lives, hasn't it? There's been, there's been too many cases to count of someone becoming a target of, say, the social justice warrior online sect and, going after their employment, going after their revenue streams. They get sacked from jobs because they bombard the boss with emails and say, this guy's a Nazi, you don't want him representing your company, and that sort of, whether it's true or not. But the reason they keep doing it is because it bloody works.
Well, how about the whole campus rape culture? How many
Sure.
how many guys have been, have had their life ruined because of fake rape accusations?
Yeah.
So this is exactly what he was talking about, and I thought that was something that, even though we kind of know about it, it's when someone comes out and articulates the point and really crystallizes it in your mind the way that Milo does, the point is just becomes stronger.
Yeah.
Something that we can talk about.
Yeah, like there's an argument there, isn't there, Ads, that you get called, I mean, we've been saying it for years, you get called racist, bigot, homophobe often enough. Eventually it's just like, well,
No,
okay.
it does nothing.
Has
It's
no
almost
impact.
it's almost a badge of honor nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else? Like,
Well,
how did he answer the Pizzagate thing?
Well, he was kind of, I guess, cryptic and just, he didn't go one way or the other.
Well, the reason why he was cryptic and didn't go one way or the other is because he's writing a new book called Despicable, which is due for release next year at some point. So
Okay.
in June, I think it was. And I don't think he wanted to, sell too many points. Otherwise, what's the point of buying the book? But
Spoiler.
he was saying that, it is entrenched in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom Chatelet on the chat there. He says, "Hey guys, you rock." Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Mate, can I just say that was a great little scope that you had with Damo, Tommy?
Yeah, Varun was a fan of memetics. There would have been plenty of memetical discussions with Milo, wouldn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Did he talk about Gamergate at all? Because he was that's where he kind of
No.
got his ticket to stardom.
Well, look, I think there was a very brief mention about it, but just in passing, because I think he just assumed that everyone kind of knows. He doesn't have to go that far deep into history
Sure.
about the whole thing.
He didn't really want to go into Pizzagate because he would have brought it up. He was only talking about it because someone threw a question his way about it. Another thing that was interesting was, how he was saying that, we need to organise.
Yep.
Yeah, we need to organise. And he was talking about a scenario that we've talked about dozens of times, and that's this, person that's sitting that's in a social group, and they've got all these things flying around in their head, and how to speak up, and that if you speak up, there's other people in that room that probably think the same way you do. They're just too scared to say anything. I thought that was another great point, because someone asked a question. I think it was a lady. Asked a question about what can I do, like, because I've got kids. Back in the day, the biggest worry was that, they might get into drugs or something like that. Now the biggest worry is that,
they'll become social justice warriors.
yeah, but they'll want to decide their gender, for example.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Or her biggest fear was that they'll be prosecuted for stating the point that they believe in.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
stating truth.
Yeah,
That's right. So
Well,
there was
that's
a lot
the
of that.
f-
There was a lot of
first step.
Australian stuff. He did his research
Good.
about Australia, so he had the full. I don't know. The majority of it was about Australia,
yeah.
and he talked a bit about.
Not a fan of Julia Gillard, I hear.
Yeah, not a fan of Julia Gillard, not a fan of Clementine
Yeah.
Ford.
Clementine Ford, famous feminist journalist here.
Yeah, and not a fan of the Opera House, Damo.
Yeah.
No, doesn't like the Opera House.
Which kind of that was probably
Surprised they didn't revoke his visa.
That was probably
after saying something like that.
Well, it was a low light of the show. to be
I
honest.
think he got the most booze though when he said that he did not like he preferred Marmite to Vegemite.
Oh no!
It was not on, Dave. It just wasn't on. And
Well, I'm off the Milo
after
train
all
then,
the
in that-
all
if
the
that's the case.
booze, he goes, "Oh guys, can you just give me an opportunity to claw my way back from that one, please?" He takes arrows from both sides.
Yeah, there's no coming back from that, though. I'm afraid.
He talked about Poland, Damo.
Did he really?
He gave Poland a rap.
What's he got to say about Poland?
Well, that no one's defending Western, civilization.
Except for the Eastern Europeans.
There are exceptions, and then I got a bit, the head started wobbling a little bit, and he mentioned Poland and Hungary, I believe, and
Yeah, okay.
Budapest.
yeah, so
Budapest. Okay.
it was a good laugh.
All right.
And then he took a swipe at the Poles.
Did he really? What did he say?
Fuck, I can't even remember. See, I delete these things straight away, so it doesn't build.
Yeah, your Polish brain doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
so it
doesn't
doesn't build the
allow
hate.
to retain negativity about the motherland. No, that's fair enough. That point that you were saying about if you're in a group and people have to speak up, you have to organise. I know you're not probably a big fan of him, David Horowitz, but that was something he said.
Absolutely.
Sort of 40 years ago when he came. When he first sort of left the left, so to speak, and came over to the right. And he's, the first thing he said to other people was like, "Where's our ground game?" And they're like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well,
There's none. No.
where's our action groups? Where's our protest groups? Where's our lobbyists? Where's our super PACs kind of thing?" Oh, we don't have any of that.
Yeah.
We don't have any of that because, the harsh reality is, the conservative-minded folks in places like flyover country in the States. They're working the farm, they got a job, they're raising
They don't want
kids.
anything to do with the
No,
government.
they don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
That's it.
So it's it's a negative for them because these other people, like the professional students, the professional agitators, they live for it.
Yep.
It's their mission in life.
Well, it's a difference in terms of the way they see the cultural political landscape. I mean, people on the right are more individualists and not collectivists. Having a ground game, getting people together, that's a very collectivist kind of a movement.
Yeah, it's very difficult for the
getting
right to do.
The right is just getting along with life.
Yep.
Pretty much, But now we live in a completely different political milieu, so we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to do that. And I think Steve Bannon has also made points like that.
Yeah,
that
he's very big on it,
We
yeah.
have to organise, guys. Whether you like it or not, this is what's needed now.
At least go vote. I think that's the starting
Yeah,
point.
get off your ass and vote.
All right, you don't have to, make a big scene at the next dinner party or say something stupid at work, but at least go and vote for a candidate. That's a little bit more, not communist. Let's put it that way.
Not communist. I guess the first thing is if people don't want to organise, you can say to them, hey, you just do it for this time. Like, we need you now, and then once we take care of, the ravenous sections of the left, once we put them back into their place and kind of subdue their influence, then you can kind of just go back to not getting involved in political action again.
Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up, because on the way back, Adam and I were having a conversation along those lines where the political polarities now, in a way, we're fighting for sort of the values and principles that we want, but we're using underhanded means, especially the left, of course, but we're using underhanded means to get to that point. So we're kind of saying pretty much, look, we have our values, but we're going to do all this dirty work, and then we'll bring in the values once everything's nice.
Yeah.
Once we've cleared the ground. But as Adam's mentioned, that humans, we don't have a great memory span, so we might get so caught up in the war that we forget those values and don't bring
it's a
in-
danger.
The war never stops.
There's a danger.
That's it. There's a danger
Yeah.
that, hey, this is, this works. Why don't we just keep on going?
Keep on going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like French Revolution styles. You'll never really behead enough people in order
right,
to
yep.
protect the revolution. But I think there is something. You and I probably disagree on this, but there is something. I try to separate the concepts, strategy and tactics. And so, if the strategy is to, sort of return Western civilization to something like something proud of itself, and with free market principles and that sort of thing. That's the strategy. But the tactics of how you go about achieving that are something different entirely. Yeah. Like, I really get distasteful for like the George Wills of the world.
Yeah, that's fair
at the
enough.
National Review, who spend sort of 40 or 50 years kind of snootily from the sidelines, like commentate, oh, this is just terrible. Oh, you know, we would never behave in this sort of manner. And then they just continue on losing. And for what? Like Tom Shadley said on the podcast the other day, so what? They can turn around to their grandkids when they've got a communist boot on their face and go, well, hey, at least I didn't, you know, substitute my values. I didn't drop to those values, you know. Yeah. It's like, hey, gee, thanks, Granddad.
Yeah.
You know, you could have done more, but you chose not to, and you wanted to act all sort of high
I
and
just
mighty
think there's
about
room for everyone. You know, there's room for the Milos. There's room for the more intellectual.
We need the Milos because they're like it's an attack piece, isn't it?
Yeah, but you need something a little bit more, you know, part of some type of elite. Like, you know, people talk about, you know, elite as a bad thing constantly.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, what do we want to protect? Western civilization. Isn't that elitism in itself?
Sure.
I mean, we want the best. We want the best people. We want the best thinkers.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's a combination of your Milos, your George Will. But George Will, I think, has fallen off now in these last few years. It's been a bad few years for George Will.
It hasn't been good for Georgie boy.
Really bad. So we'll see how we go. I think that the populist right has very little control. There's no one up the top controlling it.
Yeah, that's kind of its appeal, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the good thing is that we don't know where this is going. You know, you can't just write a script and say, oh, we need this combination of this. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think the populist right, the movement that we're seeing these days, we need the organisation, but this, I mean, we've already owned the internet. Well, I say we, but the populist right has already owned the internet, the meme wars, you know.
YouTube.
So in YouTube, in a sense, they're already organising, but it's coming, you know, it's based on the war itself. It's organic. It's not like a script, so to speak, as Adam has mentioned. And I think that growth, that slow, steady growth, will ultimately be a stronger, more formidable force for the left.
Grassroots. That's what you saw at the Milo show. I mean, you just saw normal people. And they're having conversations with trying to convince other people. That's, you know, one person at a time. Or at least open their mind.
The thing is, we can say that we're trying to convince the opponent, but I mean, at this point, there's no real convincing, is there? It is a war, and it is the tactics, like you were saying. You know, we have a strategy. There needs to be a strategy. That's the long-term goal. But the tactics that we use at this point, they've got to be warlike. As so long as we do not blur that line between strategy and tactics, in the long run.
Yeah, well, I think it was Nietzsche who said something like, if you stare into, evil long enough, you know, you'll become evil kind of thing.
You'll see yourself in it.
And I guess that's the danger that some people, like the fear that some people have. It's like, hey, if we start acting like the left in order to win politically, then, what's really the point of fighting in the first place? We may as well strap on the jackboots and join the ranks. But of course we can't do that because our brains are functioning at least a moderate level. So that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Did you see were there any kind of conversion events in the Milo audience, or was it all very, very pro? Because I would like to think that some people might go there, you know, perhaps unfamiliar with it and, you know, disagree or...
I think there would have been a lot of people that were just curious to see what all the fuss is about, but it's hard to tell. There were a fair bit of big supporters of Milo, but there was a few heckles, wasn't there?
There were a few heckles. Now I don't know if they were heckles made in jest or they're actual heckles because they were opposing thought.
Yeah, we're in the back corner type thing. We weren't right at the front or anything like that. So yeah, I guess another interesting thing is this whole Penthouse angle.
Yeah, well, apparently the organizer,
Damien Costas
from Penthouse. Yeah. Oh, is that him?
Yeah.
There's another guy though who was at one of the rallies, like to support Milo, and he's apparently a Jewish activist, like pro-Israel kind of activist, and he's been now labelled as a Nazi and a Nazi sympathiser, which I find amazing.
Yeah, we saw a couple of Israel flags as well, didn't we?
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Well, in that video where Milo's arguing with the quote-unquote Muslim girl in Sydney, in Melbourne, sorry, the guy doing the interview for Penthouse is this Ari something, I can't remember his name, but yeah, he was at the rally with your Blair Cottrells and the Blue Patriot Group or whatever they're called,
United Patriot Front.
United Patriot Front. So yeah, they were all out there. So yeah.
Yeah, look, I don't think the Blair Cottrells went to the Melbourne event. The only reason they actually went there was because they heard that there was a gathering of Socialist Alliance, you know, protesting. So they just rocked up to the other side of the street. And,
I believe the count was 500 to 50.
Which way?
Well, you can guess which way. We've just had a whole conversation about the right doesn't organise, and then you're going to ask which group turns out with 500. But yeah, and I did a little bit on a Periscope yesterday at the beginning of the Periscope. It was a 4-hour marathon, so if you can be bothered, go back watch the replay. But
I'll skim through it.
well, two different reports. One of them said, it was 50. It was a gathering of like 50 extremist far right racial tension groups or whatever you want to call it, and 500 counter protesters.
Yeah.
And in the other one, it was like a collection of 50 hard right agitators or something along those lines, and 500. Oh no, they were talking about Charlottesville, and they said it was what gathered at Charlottesville was anti-racist, it was racist groups, fringe extremists, hard right, neo-Nazis, and one counter demonstrator was killed because of it. So you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's just
It's bullshit.
see, it's so blasé to us now because we're just so used to this kind of framing game that goes on. Like,
Well, it's funny when you can.
you'd wonder though how many people like actually take notice of those sort of
Well,
things.
it's
It's slight, but it's constant. It's small, but it's always there.
Like one of the things it's just the way. One of the things that you were saying to Tom Chatterley is they might tell you the facts, but it's just the way that they use to piece those facts together that presents a completely false narrative. Now, for example, you said that there was 50 of the United Patriots Front and 500 counter protesters. Now, counter protesters, you would think they would be in the minority, but I mean, this is a 10-to-1 proportion here now, 50 to 500.
Yeah, we're only reacting. We're only here because of all those Nazis that are over there. It's like, well, hang on a minute. They're only here because you're here. You see, that's why they were there.
That's the only reason they were there. The counter protesters were the actual Patriot Front. Now, I'm not backing them.
Yeah.
I'm just stating the point.
Well, it's a fact. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fact.
Yeah.
Coming from Eastern Europe, like you do, Voice of Reason, Adam J. The left-right protest kind of angle is a fairly bit different in Poland, isn't it? Like, it's a lot more even, would you say?
No,
Or
well,
right's more, right's bigger.
oh, they're massive. Yeah. Oh, they absolutely murder each other. Well, not murder, but like they go hard.
Okay, but it's more to do. You say it's more to do with like football fandom and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, well, it's this similar themes to what we see here, but I would say the proportions are a little bit different. There'll be more like nationalists over there. They're nationalists versus Antifa. Like Antifa in Poland has to ship in Antifa from Germany, and they have all these. Little...
Okay, the George Soros bus ticket.
Yeah,
to Warsaw.
That's so I mean, they need backup in Poland. Big time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So-
But we were having a conversation about Poland, and I mean,
Go ahead.
one of the things that Adam brought up was like, they're holding Poland up on this pedestal, but they don't realise that there is an ugly side to that as well, which is true. I mean, in extreme nationalism, extreme right, has its ugly side, and that's something that we got to be careful that people don't go towards, in their war against the left, because the gulf between between the two political ideologies is just ever so gaping.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Well, I mean, when this is the best that you can get out of the Sydney Morning Herald afterwards, let me show you this one, guys. Milo Yiannopoulos' wardrobe more entertaining than tired racist barbs. So at least they're giving him a compliment on how he's dressed snappily. Right?
Yeah, well, there was an article.
It's not all bad.
Article or two a day for about a week.
Yeah, they were hammering it.
No, that was just
Absolutely hammering it because they hate him.
yeah.
The progressive left movement in media, they absolutely hate his guts. So, and you know why? Because he shows everybody that, hey, just because these people call you names and write things, like they're not superheroes. They're not, you can laugh back and you can call them names back. And he shows everybody like, hey, what are we scared of?
Exactly.
Like, he shows everyone that these people can dish it out but can't take it.
Yeah.
Because they go around calling you all sorts of every evil name under the sun, and then when you throw a little bit back in their direction, it's like, oh, that's offensive. You can't do that to me.
Yeah.
And he kind of like lifts the veil, like this veil of superiority that they have, and he just trashes it.
But it's not even that bad. I mean, I don't know. We've listened to a lot of Milo for a bit now, for a few years now.
Well, he's
so
entertaining, isn't he?
yeah, so he's entertaining. So there wasn't really anything that really shocked me.
No.
I mean,
That's a shame. I would have wanted new material.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems. Yeah.
What would be new material now, Damo, at this stage?
Well,
for
I
us?
don't know.
mean,
Like he could have
maybe-
gone into maybe the Roy Moore thing or Russiagate or something like that.
Well, that's the thing.
or-
I mean, his target audience are the younger group, and this is something that he was actually talking to one of the political commentators here for our American listeners, Andrew Bolt. And he was telling them, he goes, look, I can sit here in a tuxedo and talk politics all day, but, there's thousands of
he
people
wants to
doing
do
that.
culture.
He wants to do culture, and he
Yeah.
goes, and so this is one of the things that I was thinking. I mean, he's one of the guys who, they're young kids these days who know nothing about freedom of speech, right? So he'll take the slings and arrows by saying the most outrageous things and clear the path for them to come through, and for future generations. They say, look, you can say these things, I kind of compare him to Trump. It's like a wrecking ball that kind of smashes that sort of, that culture that's formed and smashes it to pieces just to show that, it can be done. It's the role of the people that follow through after them to piece it all together.
Yeah. Well, that's something I heard. I remember Molyneux saying a while ago, Ads, was like, you need to maintain sort of principles, like going back to our earlier discussion. Someone's going to have to maintain principles and, someone's going to have to understand, the philosophical underpinnings of what we're trying to do here, because when this control system that we're fighting against does crumble, people are going to look to somebody to say, okay, now what do we do now?
Yeah,
where do we go now?
And once we get to that stage,
and you want to be there.
Yeah, people like Milo will lose relevance.
Yeah.
Not to be too harsh.
No, that's fair.
But that's
Well, it's not relevant. It's just like their job is done now.
Exactly.
And they'll be respected in that sense.
Yeah. Let's say we get to that point, of course.
Yeah,
because
well,
that's not a short.
It's still a while to go.
Yeah, but if the whole thing crumbles and we're at a stage where okay, kind of let's start again, I guess we could say. Then the Milos will lose a little bit of, I guess, because people will start looking at Milo and say, okay, that's enough. Like we got to.
And he's probably smart enough. He'll probably reinvent himself over
Absolutely.
the years as we go
I was
as
gonna
well.
say that. I was going to say that.
Now, it was interesting to see Milo because after what happened with the comments that he made and he got booted from Breitbart.com and all that type of stuff.
Yep.
I was interested to see if he changed in any way. Now, I haven't seen Milo at a live show before, so it's hard to make that call. But I would say he really turned on the extravagance. He went full on for that, that typical Milo experience.
Yep.
And what I would like to see from Milo is just, he's very smart.
Yeah.
So the thing is, a lot of people take on Milo and say that he's dumb, that he's the Kim Kardashian of politics.
Yeah.
And all this
It's not
type
genuine, no.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Yep.
And he's got the skills to pay the bills, to have like a higher level conversation about politics or what's going on.
He's an extremely good communicator for a start, and he can articulate his points in a way that breaks through to people who would otherwise not give a single fuck about them. Like,
that's right.
Me and Tom were talking about on the podcast Ads. He was like, one of Tom's thing is you have to understand the language of the person that you're trying to convince, and you have to speak in their terms.
Absolutely.
And we've spoken about Ron Paul before. We're big fans of Ron Paul. Problem with Ron Paul is words like personal liberty and debt and deficit just isn't sexy enough to bring in the kids. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the kids don't get off on personal liberty and freedom and justice anymore.
No.
So
Well, that's what Milo's all about, isn't it? His target audience are the kids. Now, one of the things I wanted to say was I noticed that as well. He's very extravagant, sort of flamboyant.
Yeah.
And I thought also that he may have
Fabulous.
He would have fabulous, the dangerous faggot. But I thought he would have toned it down a little bit because if you remember, he came out with that supposed apology, or after those comments that he made, and he was saying, I'm going to reinvent myself. I think it's I'm done with the whole the comedy act that he does.
So you're thinking suit and a tie?
Well, not so much suit and a tie, but I thought a little more serious. But then, he just went straight back into doing what he does. So now, if we take the politics away from the whole thing, the culture wars and everything away, let's not forget that he is a showman, right?
Sure.
So, and, it's earning him good dollars.
Yeah, he earned a mill while here in Australia, apparently. Or?
Yeah, raked it in.
I mean, the guy is very rich now because of the show.
Hey,
The
capitalism,
show that
nothing wrong with that.
No, that's
the
it.
show that he puts on. So, there's a bit of personal interest in it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I find it funny, Varun, when lefties come in and say, well, he's made lots of money from this.
Yeah.
And like they're waiting for you to go, oh well, then I guess he doesn't really care about the cause that he's pushing. It's like, no, that's smart. If you can make a lot of money doing what you believe is the right thing, for one, and if you can bring other people to the cause and grow your own sort of brand in such a way that it has like the positive sort of cultural effect that you want it to have. I mean, that's like ticking every single fucking box, isn't it? Like,
it's what
why am I supposed to hate that?
It's what really pisses me off, because the next sentence or the next day they'll be saying, "Oh, that teachers don't get paid enough money."
Exactly.
It's like, if teachers know going into the teaching profession that they're not going to make a shitload of money.
You're supposed to do it for the honor of it or something.
Yeah, that's it. You're an important piece of society.
Yep.
Teaching kids. You should do it for the love of the game. And then no, but we're gonna strike because I want more money.
Well, like everything else the left says, if they're gonna say to you, like that, he's only doing it for the money. It's another non-argument, pretty much.
Yeah.
Nothing that they say is an argument.
Nothing that they say is an argument.
I'm starting to sound like Stefan Molyneux
You're
myself now.
Bit, not an argument.
Logic land.
That's the thing. Like, it's okay if you work for the government and you advocate big government and you advocate more public spending, you're not doing it for the money. But when someone like Milo comes along and,
how dare he make a buck?
Makes a bit of money from what he's doing, then all of a sudden it's like, oh no. And I just love how they try and use that as a way to try and wedge capitalists away from someone who they're enjoying their product. Yeah. Like, it's like, you don't really understand this capitalism stuff, do you?
No, they don't. That's another thing that we were talking
to make
about.
Money from doing this.
They talk about crony capitalism like it's a symptom of capitalism alone.
Yeah,
but it's not. I mean,
of course not.
And then they'll talk about crony capitalism, and then in the same breath they'll talk about public-private partnerships as something separate and something great. But that is crony capitalism when you got governments and capitalist corporate people mixing together, buying legislation, and looking after each other at the expense of. That's crony capitalism. That's the crony capitalism is closer to socialism than it is to actual capitalism.
Well, when you get like big corporations that lobby government to get exclusive government contracts that are paid for by the taxpayer, and they get exclusive tax breaks because they're providing a service to the taxpayer that they're also fleecing their money from. People come to me and say, the capitalist system is failing, and I say, we haven't been a capitalist system for 60 fucking years. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and it's similar to when companies lobby government for certain protections.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
sure. They buy legislation. That's what this public-private
throwing that in there, ads.
Public-private partnership is all about. It's
I don't think I didn't notice that, ads. Don't think I didn't notice that, you cheeky devil. Okay, well, so all in all, it was all a great night at the Milo show.
Oh yeah, look. Moreover, it was a great laugh.
They didn't sell booze.
They didn't sell booze.
Well, we got there kind of late.
Yeah, on time, but not early enough to have a few drinks.
Yeah, to have a look around.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't even... And there was a guy walking around with a bucket full of ice. Oh, is that beer? No, it's water.
Water? No, thanks. Yeah. I think I'll give that a miss.
Yeah. Have some in the tap in the bathroom.
All right, then. We've covered off Milo. Any...
Extra! Read all about it!
Just to end the show on? What have we got?
Sorry,
by the way. Sorry to interrupt, but the guys on Periscope, we did cut out there for... I missed all you cheeky devils. We cut out for a while on Periscope, but this will be up on YouTube later on, and the podcast. Let me just bring up the website for you. thecommondiscourse.com. So if you head to thecommondiscourse.com... Here it goes. Loading up. Loading. There you go. So... Yeah, this Periscope will be on YouTube, and the podcast as well, the audio version, will be up in a couple of hours or so.
Nice.
So yeah, just click on TCD Podcast or TCD Videos. You can see on your screen there. And obviously, if you want, just follow me on Twitter, and you can get the links that way, at Boogie Bumper. Same as the thing there. So yeah, extra. Read all about it. What do you got for us, Varun?
Nothing in specific, but I thought there's a lot going on with Peter Strzok. There's a lot going on with the Russian elections coming up in March.
Yes. Putin running again.
Putin's running again.
He'll win.
Yeah, I think so, because we all know
he has to win.
Medvedev was only there to break up. They have a law where you can't have two consecutive terms. Consecutive terms.
No, you could only have two. You could only have two terms.
Yeah, but then he broke it up, and then he
put in his puppet Medvedev, and then he went into Parliament and changed the law. So,
So he can now. He can.
Yeah, so now he can.
Indefinitely.
He can have a consecutive. So the other thing is, Russia is in fear of becoming if it's not autocratic enough already, I think there's a fear it can become even more autocratic, because in 2016, Putin created the Russian National Guard, which reports directly to him. There's a military force, that reports directly to Putin. So it's Putin's plaything. The other thing we've seen in Russia is a lot of banks seem to be failing, and they're getting bailed out by the Russian government. Now, whenever government comes in to bail out banks...
to be fair, though, the central bankers will make war on whichever country doesn't sort of toe the line in international, say, trade policies and whatnot. They'll declare war on you, so...
I always get very sussed when governments are bailing out companies.
Putin's not the George Soroses of the world who have the ability to, devalue currencies.
Yeah.
Especially the currencies that you've got an interest in other states.
Yeah.
And they're not a fan of Vlad.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the ruble has been in free fall for a while now.
Yep.
And mainly because, I don't know, a lot of backroom things happen in Russia. So, for example, there was a massive oil company in Russia called Rosneft, which, they had a loan due. It was due to mature, and they were going to not be able to pay it. So they sold a lot of bonds to a financial intermediary who used that as collateral to get some reverse repurchase securities, right? And then they used that to give to this oil company. This oil company then, paid off its debt and whatnot. But some currency investors got wind of this, and they started, dumping a lot of the rubles, because they thought this company is going to now short the ruble in Russia. Okay. And so that's where a lot of the economy started tanking in Russia, right? Mm. That financial intermediary that we're talking about was meant to be a secret, was actually a private bank. And on the board of that private bank were a lot of people with deep ties in the Duma and in, the Kremlin. And so now they had to be bailed out in September as well. Okay. All this bailout, when it's happening, I always get sussed, because it just, to me, how do I say it now?
Well, we don't want taxpayer money being used to prop up failing businesses.
No, you don't want that. You don't want that. But this is a power grab. This is Putin owning everything. He says, look, he's all for capitalism, or so he says. But he goes, to get capitalism there, I have to do my work first. So, he's already very popular in Russia. Culturally.
Yeah, about 80% approval rating or thereabouts.
Yeah, so he's very popular already. So he knows that he can do it, buy out these banks, pretty much. That's what a bailout is. He'll control them, right? And he's also got the National Guard that reports directly to him.
That does seem odd, though, because I thought that his position is like strictly foreign relations and international based, and whereas the Prime Minister deals with all the domestic stuff. Yeah, am I right there? Because I thought his position was mainly as president to deal with other countries.
This is Putin, though, that we're talking about. He pretty much does what he wants, I think. In Russia.
No. Well, let's put it.
I know that. Okay.
Sorry. He can. It is the Prime Minister's duty to do a lot of those things domestically, but he takes his lines from Vladimir Putin.
But aren't they from different parties?
Aren't they? No, it's his party that's in power.
Okay,
isn't it?
I don't know.
We need to check that out.
I don't know about that.
Is it still?
I thought the Prime Minister was from a different
party. The opposing party.
Well, if not from a different party, he's from a different faction of Putin's party.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Because I think the Prime Minister, I forget his name, it escapes me, but is a bit more liberal, like a bit more lefty, whereas Vladimir is obviously not. So
well, he can always poison him.
Just hand out one of those Russian press passes, comrade. Okay, what have we got?
Extra,
anything else? What do you want? Do you want to add anything adds to this? Or anything caught your eye?
Anything caught my eye? Well, Donald Trump has decided to recognise Jerusalem as
capital of Israel.
Capital of Israel.
I think most people understand that Jerusalem's been the capital of Israel for a long time.
Yep, and he he's going to put an embassy there, was it, in Jerusalem?
Move the embassy.
Move the embassy. Yep. So that's been pretty big news.
Yeah, well, it was first voted on by the Congress in 1995, and it had mass approval. And every president since that time has pushed it back for national security reasons. Like not doing. I think he just got there and said, Why have we delayed this? Like, everyone agreed on it 22 years ago. Let's just go ahead and do it, and then bang, and that's he strikes me as that kind of a person. Like, why is this still hanging around?
Yeah.
Let's just do it and done. But obviously people have different opinions. What's yours, Ads? What's your very strong opinion on Israel? Let's go there.
Let's not go there. But
the last castle of political correctness, I think you referred to it as.
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, it is. But let's remember that the United States and Israel have a very strong relationship, and that's a starting point.
They do.
Very strong. And I mean, it's there, and that's how it is, and no one's gonna fucking change it.
Sure.
So the problem is that a lot of countries around the world have differing opinions, or they should. I mean, about this issue. I mean, to put it bluntly, I wish Israel all the best, but I don't give a fuck about Israel, in the sense that I'm not. When Bibi Netanyahu says that you gotta recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, I'm like, no, I don't. And that's basically
if
where,
not from a different party,
where I am with it.
He's from a different faction of Putin's
America,
because I think the Prime Minister, I forget his name.
Israel's kind of like the most connected kid in the schoolyard.
Sure.
Can go around, he can do basically anything she wants or he wants, and always knows that it has the backup of the biggest kid in the grade. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and that creates a lot of tension, and this comes back to, I guess, trade-offs. Are we willing just to let Israel do whatever it wants without ever saying anything? See, because the problem, and this is where the political correctness comes in, is that when we start talking about, some of Israel's actions, then it's like, oh, well,
You're anti-Semite. Yeah.
Anti-Semite. You're not a believer in the state of Israel. I'm like, whoa. Yeah, I'm a believer in Israel existing, and I don't want it to be pushed into the sea, or I don't want holocausts or anything like that.
But that doesn't buy unbridled, undying loyalty and yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir.
Yeah, and and when I heard that Donald Trump made this announcement, I didn't have a picture of Anne Frank in the back of my head, saying, oh well, what happened to Anne is horrible, and so I just need to swallow this. So I think we're not quite there yet with Israel, but maybe in a few decades, maybe people will wake up a little bit and say, hey, Israel's got a role in the Middle East. It's not just, Israel's a massive victim here. The Jewish people in the Middle East aren't on the brink of extinction. They've got one of the best performing economies in the world. They've got some of the largest investment streams in the world.
They're the highest number of startups proportionally.
Yeah,
in the world.
They are in extremely good shape. Yeah, sometimes a few rockets get pissed over the border. That's unfortunate, and that's horrible. And I'm not trying to say that it's minimize it. Yeah, but that's just how it is.
Yeah, but look, to be fair, I mean, Israel is a sovereign country, and they have autonomy over their cities, and they can pick and choose
pick their own capital.
Pick their own capital. I mean, I don't even see why this is an argument at all in the first place. I mean, what is Palestine? What historical ties does Palestine have in that region? Israel has historically, politically, every right to choose Jerusalem as their nation's capital.
I guess the argument you'll get to that from some people would be, Varun, that even if you're going in a biblical context, that the Jews were different, are not the same people as the Hebrews. Yep. You see, who inhabited the area at the time.
Okay, so are Palestinian Hebrews?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say, I mean, if we're going to look at, when you hand things down generation to generation, the greatest, Israel has that right. Israel is probably the closest descendants of the Hebrews.
Yeah. Well, and
it's next of kin kind of thing.
A lot of people on the left, I've noticed, are making the argument like, well, this is going to stir up the Muslim world, and I'm thinking, yeah, but what doesn't?
What doesn't? Exactly.
Come on,
let's be honest. They spoke of the Day of Rage.
Yeah, well, the Day of Rage, what's that? Like a Tuesday? That's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
That's
a Wednesday and a Thursday and a Friday.
It's like a Craig Davidson.
Yeah. Well, and
in fact, you talk about the Ramadan days. I mean, they're full of days of rage, isn't it? Isn't that what it's all about?
Well, the Turkish,
they're starving.
Erdogan from Turkey ads came out and said, this is going to have grave ramifications. There's no historical, or something like Palestinians have the historical tie to the land. And I'm like, okay, well then give back Turkey to the Christians then.
Yeah,
if that's the way you want to feel.
Yeah,
know,
that's
says
exactly
the
that's the
person that
game
is-
that you want to play.
Says the person that's locked up like 20,000 judges.
Exactly.
Journalists. And,
Yeah. So I mean, I think you need
Says
to
the person who campaigns in Holland with Turkish people in Holland and Germany and stuff to, overthrow the governments and make them Islamic. Oh, we
Yeah.
can't do. That's all right.
Yeah. Tries
know.
to sneak in people from his party into Holland to give, speeches to the Turkish diaspora in Holland.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Says
honestly.
the guy who equates, German pensioners marching on the streets with placards as, Nazism and a day of rage, and he's advocating a day of rage to go and bomb Jerusalem. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just...
coming. The Turkish were allies of the Nazis.
Yep. Well, look, I'm not even against anyone, but this is the point. I think there's a collective mindset in society now where I think everyone's kind of just getting sick of it. And when you say it, what is it? I'm like everything. Yeah. So you know what? The Jews the Israelis, they can do their own damn thing there. I don't fucking care anymore, And yes, people are gonna be upset. Fucking, I don't care. Don't tell me. Yeah. Just sort it out.
Yeah.
Sort it out.
Do what you got to do.
And that's where I come from. Really, that I believe that there should be pressure by the international community.
They should or shouldn't.
They should, in the way that
no more aid either.
Yeah, in the way that Damo explains it, that the international community is just sick of it. Yeah. I mean, love it or like it. The details don't matter, but
for or against, this is the reality.
This is the reality that yous need to sit down and sort it out. Yeah. you need to sit down and sort it out because there's here in Sydney. I mean, there is some guy somewhere planning a terrorist attack right now, probably.
Yep.
I mean, there's a high chance.
Well, there was just one foiled in the UK. They were going to kill Theresa May.
Yeah. And
3 days after she said that it's wrong to say that Muslims are unsafe in the UK.
And part of the foundation of that ideology is what's happening in the Middle East. Now, that's not to say that I agree with him or that, fuck Israel or anything like that. All I'm saying is that they need to sort it out for everyone else's good.
Correct.
And sometimes I don't think Israel does enough, but that's just...
Look, the thing is, I mean...
Settlements.
Go back to my old question, who are the Palestinians? Aside from a collection of, Egyptians and Jordanians, Palestinians really...
they're there now.
They're also not just Muslims either. They're Christians and...
That's right.
Muslims, so...
Yeah, Muslims. I mean, they're Shiites. Really.
Well, they're there now.
Yeah.
There's Christian Palestinians. I mean...
They are Christian Palestinians. Yeah. I know that. But that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, with Palestine, there's no real claim for Palestinians to own Jerusalem. There's no real claim that I can say personally. I mean, I could be proven wrong. Obviously,
well, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't the original agreement something like the Israelis have like a section of the city and the Palestinians have the other section?
Yes, that's what I was supposed
to. So the argument. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah.
Like I'll just play devil's advocate for a second. The argument is that now if Israel makes Jerusalem the capital, that they will extend the boundaries out. And they will force everyone else out of the city if they're not Israeli. So,
but
that's pretty much what's happened.
But that's what's pretty much what happened with Israelis. I mean, Jews aren't allowed up on the Temple Mount. Muslims are. Jews aren't. But Muslims are allowed to go into the Jewish-owned areas and do whatever they want. But Jews aren't allowed to go into the Muslim-owned areas and do what they want. That's unfair. No one really talks about it. You say that in the UN, someone speaks out against Israel and they'll say, oh, you're an anti-Semite and shut it down. I think for the past 8 to 10 years, it's been quite the opposite. Israel's been copping a lot of flack. Palestine even has a seat at the UN. How the fuck do they have a seat in the UN? They're not really even a country, to be honest. They
haven't been officially recognised.
Yeah, they're not a country, but there's a group of people there that, I guess identifies themselves as Palestinian now, and they're there.
Yeah.
Like we say, who are the Palestinians? Well, they're people.
Yeah, well, they're people, but they're just they're a collection of different people.
Yeah, they're a collection of different people, and, the international community has been working towards a two-state solution. Now, a lot of people say now that this is the death of the two-state solution.
Is it why though? I don't quite. I've heard that a lot too. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know why it means there can't be a two-state solution. I can't give you a straight
answer, but I would say that it probably that's the big thing about this decision is that the recognition by the Yanks and the moving of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem is a vote that the two-state solution is dead. Now, I think Trump denies this. I think Trump still says publicly that he's in favour of two-state solution.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, but going back to the earlier point, where the international community is kind of sick of it, I mean, the two-state solution has been talked about for the better part of 4 decades, and it's not any closer now than it was in 1970. So what the fuck are we talking about here?
Absolutely.
Well, I think
What solution? Show me this. It hasn't worked. There is no solution.
No, there is no solution.
So stop telling me that, this is going to be the end of the solution. What fucking solution?
Yeah, well,
You
I
know?
proposed a solution.
Yeah, not you,
Yeah,
but you know
yeah.
what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I think that, both sides, they need to be put under pressure that, hey, we're just going to pack up our bags and leave, and you guys can just fucking murder each other to fucking death.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're sick of it.
Well, it's interesting the climate that it's happened in, where now Israel and Saudi Arabia are sort of seeming to join forces.
Yes.
I
Well,
think-
they have been for a while because they both hate Iran.
Yeah, that they both hate Iran. And,
You know, in that part of the
so-
world, Varun,
and
the
we-
enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Absolutely, yeah. And we know, Trump not too long ago visited Saudi Arabia, and it was a favourable visit, even though he stated his claim and said, look, there are some things that we're upset about.
Well, he supported
But
he
he-
supported Salman, and then Salman went around and on the presumably with the backing of Trump, arrested all of his political opponents and people who have great interest in, say, things like Twitter and stuff.
Yeah,
who have
and
been
they want to
very
liberalise
anti-Trump,
Saudi
yeah.
Arabia.
They
from
do.
a little.
That
I mean,
may
women
be-
can drive
may be
now.
part of the
Women can
agreement.
drive now in Saudi Arabia.
That's
Wow.
unfortunate.
That's what Milo would say, actually.
Whatever you do, don't change that, guys. We can do without that. All right, one more.
Extra,
One thing they got right.
Read all
One thing they
about
got
it.
One little bit of extras for you guys. Varun ads. We were talking. Roy Moore's been a big story. Now it turns out that the main accuser in the Roy Moore affair has come out and said, okay, you know what? Yeah, I
He didn't
kind-
write
I
everything.
kind of wrote it. I
Yeah.
kind of did the yearbook thing myself,
Yeah.
and like a lot of faces are now red, and all red,
All red.
all red. Gloria, all red. And I remember,
fitting.
and I just remember beating back the calls from sort of progressive types like, he's got to go, you got to get rid of him now. And I remember saying, we don't know, Trump's played this perfectly. He's put himself at arm's distance. He said, when more information comes to light, I'll deal with it then. But for now, let's just be calm and see what happens. And once again, and of course you're accused of being a hypocrite if you take that kind of stance by saying, well, there's a lot of factors in this case which kind of look a bit dodgy to me, but I guess because he's a Republican, I must be being a hypocrite then, so, but, it turns out that everything's not
Moore's
quite as it
fortunate.
seems.
I think Moore's fortunate, and I think that his rebuttal to the accusations was a bit flaky.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
It was.
Yeah, we
and
discussed that
He
in
didn't
earlier
do
show.
himself any justice.
And now these new revelations, this is what happened. There was a bit of downtime there where these accusations came out, and what happened in the background was the Republican Party was vetting all these accusations and if there's any proof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what happened a week ago or so, the RNC endorsed Moore,
Yep.
or Mitch McConnell even, and or something like that. I think there were public comments that they're going to support. What does that mean? That means that there's no evidence.
There's no evidence. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
it was about a week ago that Mitch
Yeah.
McConnell came out and said that.
Okay, so there's no evidence, and so it's dead in the water, and they need more. That's
Yeah.
They don't need him, but they do need him.
Well, this is...
So you're changing your stance there a little from last time that we spoke.
No, I'm not changing my stance at all. I
No,
think
I
he should
thought-
Well,
resign.
what
Thought you
about
mentioned-
the Democrats? I don't know. Did you guys see the campaign ad that they ran against Roy Moore just last week?
Not really, no.
Pretty hectic stuff. They came out and said, Roy Moore's a child predator, and if you vote for... Hang on, this is the best part, Varun. It amounts to intimidation, voter intimidation. Because
Oh,
they,
yes, I did see that.
Yeah,
Yes.
if
your
you-
vote is recorded.
Your vote's a public record,
Yeah.
and if you vote for a child predator, everyone's going to know that you did,
Yes.
and they'll be coming for you, kind of thing. So that's like a step too far.
That's a
isn't
threat.
it?
Well, it's a bridge too far, for
Well,
sure.
it is a threat.
Yeah,
it's
a
voter
threat.
intimidation.
Yeah.
The exact thing that they accuse everyone else of. Voter intimidation. I find the funniest bit to that is, to me, like the Democrats will say that asking people to present ID when they go to vote is racist and wrong. However, if you vote for a Republican, then we're going to find out your ID and tell everybody about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
please, right?
Get it together, guys. Which one is it?
Be consistent.
One thing that I'm happy about is now I love this guy to death, but he fucking pisses me off sometimes, and that's Ben Shapiro.
Yep.
Ben Shapiro has been at the forefront of on the Republican side, saying that we should get rid of Roy Moore. We should get rid of Roy Moore.
Of course, he's an establishment pin-up boy,
Well,
Ben Shapiro.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I don't fully buy
Of course he
all
is.
of that.
Big
but
anti-Trump.
He was.
Hey, I bet you love the
cool.
Jerusalem decision.
Oh, he
I bet he
loved
did,
it.
yeah.
He loved it. He loved
It'd be
it.
hard to call Trump.
But look,
Hitler now,
he
isn't
does
it,
he does admire some of the good things that Trump does, and he also talks bad about some of the things that Trump does.
Sure.
Obviously, that the proportion there is more, sort of leaning towards the negative.
Yeah, that's fine.
But he's been, at the forefront saying that we have to get rid of Roy Moore. We have to get rid of Roy Moore. Now he's got fucking egg all over his face, hasn't he?
Well, exactly.
And I'm loving that.
A lot of people do.
Yeah, I'm loving that. I'm
And
going to listen
Al-
to him next
Al
next
Franken
episode.
stepped down as well.
Yeah.
He's gone, and he came out and said, well, I see of course I understand the irony of me resigning from Congress, but, we've got someone who's admitted to sexual harassment still in the White House. I thought
No, he
they'd
didn't.
never miss an opportunity.
Well, he didn't.
Never miss a chance. But it's like, who cares? Okay, Al, I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say anymore.
I guess I would say,
See, mate.
it takes one to know one.
Yeah, very good. Very good. All right, well, is that anything else, or are we going to wrap it up there, leave it there? Jolly good show.
We're going to talk about Peter Strzok at all? Or
Peter
just
Strzok?
leave it? Yeah.
You
I
wanna
was
leave it?
I don't
how he
even know
said
how-
he was banging some broad and he sent him messages about Trump, that he hates Trump or something.
Yeah.
So-
Well, yeah, but that just opened the door because three or four of the
Weissman.
team now have come out and they're on the chopping block because they've got massive anti-Trump ties. I think the problem with the whole Mueller thing is they went too hard and they thought let's just, and they've loaded them up with progressives and pro-Clinton people, and it's just lost credibility in the eyes of the public. On my scope yesterday, I played a little bit of Senator Chuck Grassley, who was going to town on the need for unbiased oversight and stuff. And if you can't sort of investigate the two things equally, be it Russia collusion or Clinton emails, and you say we have to do one and not the other, then you're a disgrace basically. But then the problem is for people like Chuck, it doesn't matter if he's the most unbiased person in the world. If you're a blue blood Democrat, the fact that he's a Republican saying this means that he's being biased.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's
it's
right.
Yeah.
That's
Same with Devin Nunes.
That's
I
the
mean,
climate
you
we're in
remember
right
Devin
now.
Nunes? He all of a sudden made a resurgence a couple of weeks ago and was
Yep.
saying the same
He's
thing.
going
He was
very
blowing against Mueller
Yep.
and was calling for an investigation into the investigation, pretty much.
Yep.
I think he's absolutely correct.
I don't even think you need an investigation now.
At
I
this
think you
stage,
just
yeah.
let Mueller go. It gets worse for him every single day.
Yeah.
He's now trying to subpoena. What was it? I don't know if it came out, if it was fake news or not. There was reports. Deutsche Bank.
Oh, yeah,
They said we're
yeah.
going back sort of 20 years
Yeah,
into
so
Donald Trump's financial
What's the investigation
records.
about again?
Yeah,
Because I thought it was about Russia collusion.
Getting those tax returns.
Yeah, no, it's about
No, because when Trump went broke, he borrowed money off the Russians, wasn't it? Or
no, Deutsche Bank. But
Deutsche Bank.
they're gonna try and say because the Russian government has an interest in Deutsche Bank that somehow he was borrowing money from the Russians, when everybody knows full well that basically every single government makes investments into other banks. So
Deutsche Bank was also in a bit of trouble. They were about to go under as well.
they were, they were. Totally. But that's all going to wash out. Maybe we can do that next time when there's a bit more information at hand.
Yep. No worries.
So until then, Varun Prasad, Voice of Reason Adam J, Damien White at Boogie Bumper, thecommondiscourse.com. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
And we saw the polling industry doing everything they could to demoralize our campaign.
Came, we saw, we died.
Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we.
Go home to mommy. Bye.